Well, what do you think about living in the last days? How about a show of hands? Do any of you see notable signs of the end times? Show of hands. Yeah? So, it's not just me. You know, way back at the turn of the beginning of the early church, when John was writing his epistles, he talks about the Antichrist, and he says the Antichrist is already in the world. And if you think about it, everything that is anti-Christ is all around us. Yes? Yeah. So thinking of it more than just as a figure, an individual, but a spirit, the spirit of Antichrist is in the world. And so we become more conscious of that as we look around us and we see the things that are going on all over the world. And God gives us His Spirit-inspired words in the Bible to help us to recognize this and to be able to adapt and do what we need to do as we recognize it. And I like this. What did I do? Oh, it sounds pretty good, though. Okay, thank you. Bible, I like this. Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Does that make sense? Especially in light of last days, end times, these times that we live in. God gives us the signs. He gives us the signs of the times and tells us what to watch for. He tells us, Jesus tells us to be watchful, wait, be alert. And we know right where to find those words. They're on our coffee table, and we just need to brush the dust off, right? And we can get at it. See, these basic instructions do more than just tell us about these times. They also tell us how to prepare for it, how to live a life that's pleasing to God, a privileged and productive life lived for His purposes. Now that's so antithetical to the way we live. We're really all consumed with our own lives and our own plans and our own way. You saw that one of the slides had a God's way, my way. Did you see that? Like the road signs? And I was wondering, where would I put that sign? Right? I'd put the my way in my driveway. But I don't think I could put the God's way on Cole Road. I'm just not convinced of that. Boy, yesterday the traffic started around 3 o'clock. Yesterday was Saturday. Friday, the traffic started around 3 o'clock, all pouring down Cole Road. My tenant works for a contractor that does PG&E's maintenance work around their various facilities, a lot of them out in the wild. And he was working around Oroville. It took him 5 hours to get back to Aromas. That's awful. That's just terrible. Anybody going to be on the road this weekend? Or are you staying home? Stay home. I'm happy to be home. Happy to be home. So, we have signs of the times. And here's what Jesus has to say about it. If you look at the picture in the background, you see some disturbing signs of the times. Trouble. Trouble all around us. Trouble everywhere we look. Trouble when we turn on the TV and get a snapshot of it. Jesus answered, he's talking to a group of people, and he says, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. We're going to see the rise of that, and we've seen it over the years. People will, the Bhagwan and different people like that who want to pose as being this kind of a spiritual leader, and some would take them as being the spiritual leader. But he's saying, watch out, you're going to hear more and more of this, and it might take on a little different shape. It might say he's over here, or he's over there. But he's not the he that we're talking about. That's the important part. He says this, you will hear rumors. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, the possibility of wars, countries that are vying for dominant power. But see to it that none of you are alarmed. See to it that you're not alarmed. It's not so easy to not be alarmed, is it? We see what's going on in Ukraine. We see what's going on between Israel and all the Arab nations around them. We hear China's positioning, and even North Korea. We're funding Russia and providing arms for them. It's hard to not be alarmed, isn't it? Yeah, especially if you have young sons, as you say, or if you have, we're beyond the point of having young children, most of us, but if you have grandchildren coming up in this world, all things considered, it's hard to not be alarmed. And he says, such things must happen, but the end is still to come. So we're going to endure these kinds of things, wars and rumors of wars. We're going to have to endure that kind of thing. He says, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Now we know that to be true right now. Oftentimes those famines are the result of those wars and those nations against nations. Hi, Tim. Nations against nations, and people being displaced and on the run, on the move, living in camps, and there's famines and earthquakes in various places. He says, you're going to see that. You're going to notice that, aren't you? Don't we notice that? All these are the beginning of birth pains. I've referenced this before along the way because it's not just a brand new thing for today. It is the thing we live in. Now, what do birth pains? What do you think that means? All these are the beginning of birth pains. Ladies? I thought I heard you say oy vey. Okay, so yes. Those labor pains, those contractions grow closer and closer together. Yes, Cheryl. A lot of things. Yeah, sure. And yes, and where you talk about what I'll classify as nausea, that happens long before. That's early on. And so these nauseating things we see, these aches and pains of the earth and the world around us. And Pam, what were you going to say? Pam, now is the time. Here. Oh, when you were pregnant. Okay. I thought this was some current
But I was looking forward to it. Like today when I see, okay, things are starting to happen and people, things are being as
They're
Jesus
accelerating.
Okay, that's
Yeah, hey, Bruce, I don't think that's working. So since we're not recording, um, we'll just have you talk loud, folks. Okay? Speak loud. The new birth. Yes. See, here's the thing. These are all terrible, atrocious things, and we're afraid. We're alarmed. We're afraid of those who are dying now. I mean, we're concerned for those who are dying now, even though it's over there and we can look the other way. But we're afraid of our own death. We're afraid of our own passing because it's, number one, it's change. It's something different. It's something we don't know. It's something we fear. We can't control it. Well, that's what this is about. All these are the beginning of birth pains, and after you've gone through all of that pain, yes, women, then you hold that new baby. And I've so many TV shows and pictures I've seen immediately. You're holding the new baby. Well, you've forgotten about all the pain. They have to take it away. Do you cut the cord? Yes, yes, yes. You're going to get something brand new, new life. So this life, in this manner, as we're looking at here in this idea of the last days, living in these last days, as we're looking at that, it's the end of something that's not good. In so many ways, what we're looking at is not good. All the things that were just referenced, but it's going to be the beginning of something brand new. Much better. There's no comparison. Better beyond our understanding, better beyond our grasp. And so we have to have trust and faith and belief in the good Lord. That He's good all the time. We're living in these last days, and so I have some passages that come to mind. 2 Peter 3:3-4 says, first off, you need to know that in these last days, mockers are going to have a heyday. Reducing everything to the level of their petty feelings, they'll mock.
This is way more believable than anything that takes place in the Bible. I'm just saying.
Would you classify him as a mocker? Was that pretty believable? It must be true. I saw it on the internet. It's got to be true. They are. You know what? And that's going to be part of the deception. A man who rises from the dead, who's revered and feared, all of those kinds of things are going to be made very, very real. Whatever the lie is will be carried out in a way, sensory way that's very believable, and it happens so fast, and it goes across social media, and the whole world is being deceived. You need to know that in the last days, mockers are going to have a heyday, reducing everything to the level of their petty feelings. They will mock. Have you ever been a mocker? I have been a mocker. In fact, there are things I still mock. But this specifically is talking about all things holy, mocking all things holy. I know mockers. I know mockers that are close to me, and it concerns me. It's sad. You know what? Your mockers, the mockers that you know, whether you know them and whether they're close to you or not, should be in your prayers. That's where you have power. That's where you have influence. That's where you can be, that's where the words can be given to you that you can use that will hopefully penetrate. And maybe it won't happen just all in one shot, but over time, with your prayers, with your positivity, with your words, where you can say these are just the beginning of birth pains, it's going to get wonderful from here. He goes on and he says, so what's happened to the promise of his coming? Like that man, that mocker. So what's happened to the promise of his coming? Our ancestors are dead and buried, and everything is going on just as it has from the first day of creation. Well, this person, these were Jews that were saying that at that time. The first day of creation at least acknowledges there was a creation, not just an accidental, spontaneous kind of a thing. Nothing's changed. We could easily take that position. Nothing's changed. We've been hearing about his coming. We've, Harold Camping, you know, he's put up his signs. I didn't see those, but you were in a place where you'd see them. You know, saying it's happening, he's coming, and then he doesn't. And so they've cried wolf. They're not supposed to even be doing it. Jesus said, nobody knows the day or the hour. Nothing's changed. We're living in these last days. Let's look at what Paul writes to Timothy, and it's his second letter to him, verses 3, 1 through 5. He says, but mark this, there will be terrible times. He really is paralleling what Peter has said in his second letter. There will be, mark this, make a note. Make sure you recognize that there will be terrible times in the last days. The great and terrible day of the selfie. See, I'm going to make a point here. I'm going to put some emphasis on something that I think is very real that we need to be conscious of. Is it just a simple selfie? Or is it simply being self-absorbed? What is it depicting? I mean, how harmful is a selfie? But in fact, have you ever taken one? Of course you have. Let me get all of you all in here. Okay, that's the problem. You got to have a special, I can't get you all, but we'll go with that. I'll smile. Oh, my. You know what? It's all kind of silly in a way. It can be a lot. I meant to bring it. It's this little telescopic stick that lets you hold it like this. A what? A selfie stick. Yeah, you know, there are things you can get for that, but you should get them soon because they're going to be tariffed. Everything comes from China, right? The great and terrible day of the selfie. I want to emphasize this in a sort of a lighthearted, comical way, but take it seriously. Are we selfied or are we self-absorbed? Is our culture focused on selfies that are making us self-absorbed? It says, mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves. People will be lovers of money without love for God or for serving others. You know, you can't really say you love God or that you serve God, but you have no heart, no mind, no will, no evidence of serving other people, which is really a true joy. It really is truly a joy. You know, I have a long history of cutting wood and taking trees down and doing that kind of thing. And I hear of some of our senior ladies who need to have a tree taken out. Marilyn, you told me about a dead tree you have out by your place and you burned firewood. You remember that? You have a tree. Sharon, did you say you have a tree? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Anyway, I think of this. I'd love to go out and help people take their trees down and process them. I enjoy it. Andy, you were talking about Ted Sr., who's passed, and how you offered his son that, you know, when they're in the process of clearing out his things, perhaps you could rally some people. It's a joy to be of service like that, is it not? There's only so much time. There's only so much physical stamina. There's only so many people that you can call on, but there are things you can do. And if you understand that people will be lovers of money without love for God. I inserted that, without love, but without love for God or for serving others. Let's nail it down. It's going to go on here, this letter to Timothy. They will be unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. It's not just a male thing or a female thing, it's a human thing. They will have a form of godliness, but denying its power. You know, I think some of us who are of the frozen, chosen ilk, myself included, might be missing a portion, some depth of the power of the Holy Spirit. Okay, well, it's running ahead of me. One inquiring mind wanted to know, how many selfies does Kim Kardashian take per day? Well, there was a reply to that. There was a reply. You know, this was people who watch entertainment to whatever, people who read Self magazine, people who read People magazine, people who are in the know and want to be in the know, what might pose a question like that. I saw it on the internet. I'm going to take it to be true. Okay. Huh? This is going to get better because there's a reply to it. 1,500 selfies a day, about 88.2 selfies an hour, a mind-blowing 1.5 selfies a minute. Yeah, well, I'm thinking she must be taking a selfie when she's on the bowl. How can you get this many selfies in, 1.5 selfies a minute? It's probably quite an exaggeration, but the point is made. The point is made that we live in a very narcissistic society. The word narcissism and narcissistic is really coming into full view right now. This sounds very narcissistic to me. And we see a lot of it today, from the very top down to the bottom. In these last days, many will seek selfie significance in Botox lips, and lipo-filled hips. That's a Kardashian thing. That's a total Kardashian thing. We sang this song earlier. It's all about you. It's all about you. Well, this says it's all about me.
It's all about me.
It is all about you. Now the greatest collection of me worship ever assembled on one CD.
It's all about how I lift my name on high.
All 20 songs, all about you.
My praises, I exalt me.
This amazing collection is great to share with friends, if you have any. Everyone can join in the worship with you, for you, and about you. Because you are unique, and you love you.
There is none like me. No one else.
All this for only $19.95. Operators are standing by to serve you.
And I am why I sing, and I am why I live.
If you order now, you'll also receive a second CD of Yuletide favorites.
I sing, no
Call 1-800-ME-ME-ME or order online at memyselfandi.com. Call today.
Was that enough? Well, you get the point, don't you? Narcissus, do you know who Narcissus was? He was a young man, he was a handsome, beautiful young man, and he was totally self-absorbed in the day of the first selfie. When he gazed down in a pool of water, he had resisted the approach of other people because he only had time to admire himself. And he fell in love with his own reflection in that pool of water. Unable to leave the allure of his own image, Narcissus eventually realized that his love could not be reciprocated, and he melted away from the fire of passion burning inside him, eventually turning into a gold and white flower and ultimately perished. So you have the narcissus plant, right? Yeah. Well, that's where it gets its name. Go figure. I want to say a little bit more about narcissism because I think we might even need to look in the mirror about this. How much focus is on ourselves? How much is not externally focused? Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, it has a name, is a personality disorder characterized by a lifelong pattern of exaggerated feelings of self-importance. Can you think of anyone like that? I can't say the name. An excessive need for admiration. It's all about me, for my glory and my fame. Narcissistic personality disorders, NPD, is a personality disorder characterized by a long life pattern of exaggerated feelings of self-importance, an excessive need for admiration, and diminished ability to empathize with other people's feelings. Now, maybe you start there. Maybe you find yourself in that capacity. I have to identify with some of that. I can be very dismissive of other people's feelings. I can say, well, just get over it. I can say, well, you know, that's unfortunate for you, but I got other things to do. So Josh Lane, who was here, he's the director of our association, wrote his doctoral thesis on narcissism amongst pastors. No one is exempt. The person who stands up here might seem to have it together. No. That song we sang, truth be told, the truth is seldom told. And towards that end, just for the heck of it, Andy gave me this cap. I'll tell you what it says. Pastor warning. So when you see me coming, it says, pastor warning. Anything you say or do could be used in a sermon. It's not a Miranda warning. It doesn't say anything you say or do can be used against you in a court of law. And certainly the pulpit should not be such a place. But it's true. You know, the pastor's job, the shepherd's job, is to know the condition of his flock and to be relevant in what we say. But you know, another thing I've noticed and I think is totally true, oftentimes we're up here working out our own stuff. The message is for ourselves. We've had time to process it and think it over. Doesn't mean that we've got it together. Now, there's one school of thought that says you don't talk about anything that you don't have all worked out. I'm skeptical of people who come across like, well, I used to be that way. I'm not anymore. I'm skeptical. No, I think we will be working things out all our life if we're attentive to the things that God has for us and to the things that need to change for the better. So that we're not this way. Maybe that's why monks were quiet. That. You know what? There's probably great merits to just being quiet. In fact, many great merits to just being quiet, just being still and knowing that He's God. Instead of trying to figure everything out and trying to have it all worked out so that you don't need God, there's much more need, and I'll own this one, I'm speaking to myself, for quiet, for stillness. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Boy, there's a lot there. Who's the God of this age? The Spirit, the prince of the air, the enemy, the liar, the deceiver, the accuser. Want to give him a name? Huh? Satan, Lucifer, the devil. He has blinded the minds, not just the eyes, the whole mind, what the eye takes in, what the ear hears, all of that goes up into the mind. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, all of these things that are about me and serve me and delight me. Well, He's blinded the minds of believers, unbelievers. Let's make sure it's not believers, so that they cannot see the light of the gospel, the good news that displays the glory of Christ. It's found in the gospel, in the words, in the picture, in the understanding of who Jesus is, who is the image of God. Soren Kierkegaard is a name you might have heard before. He says there's two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, and the other is to refuse to believe what is true. Two ways to go about this thing. To be blinded, to stay in the dark. Well, we're living in these last days right here and right now. So I've been talking really globally, last days, environmentally, politically, between countries, between people, relationally. We're living in last days in that regard. But we also have last days in our own lives, don't we? None of us are spring chickens. Yeah? Do you recognize those last? We have a spring chicken here. Hi, Michaela. It's nice. We got to have at least one spring chicken. And hopefully you can stand on our shoulders and gain something from what we're speaking about from the far end. So what last days are you living in? Well, certain things have gotten my attention recently, reminding me that I want to be living right as the coming of the Lord approaches. Things have been capturing my attention. And so as I say, oftentimes we're speaking about things that are relevant and true for myself. I do because I believe there's probably a place to connect out there. So some years ago when I was in a deep state of depression, I shared it openly, the thing that people don't do. They're not going to own that. But I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not the only one in the room. And it's easy to be in denial. It's easy to put on a face, and no, it's not necessarily easy. We can do that, though. And so there's been things that have been on my mind a lot lately. And I think we all have some last day things in common. Our age. Do you not approach life differently today than you did a few years back? It's knocking at your door. It's making us have to realize some things that maybe I've been in denial about my physical condition. I got a lot of distance I have to go yet if I'm going to live in the country where I live. So I've taken care of a lot of my parts. But I still get up stiff knowing I need to be doing some stretching. There's things I need to be doing. Last days, I realized recently that I was probably preaching my last Easter sermon. Here, for sure. See, we're all in the common last days environment here. And we might just as well own the reality of that because it's like those birth pains. That there's a difficult passing, but there's something on the other side. And so I'm also reminded that I need to be thinking more about what I'm moving towards than what I'm moving away from. Because there are a lot of pieces, a lot of steps to the moving away, to passing this church on in the best possible condition to you in the hands of someone who can make it much more than it is. So much more. Some years ago, it was at one of the early annual conferences that I've gone to, Nancy and I have gone to for many years. A pastor told this story. This was at Asilomar, years back. He told a story of how there was an elderly church, a small church like our own, and they said, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful for us to have some families, to have some young people here, to have some children? Wouldn't that be wonderful? And so they got a pastor in who was oriented towards doing exactly that, bringing those young people in. And it began to happen. And the music began to change. And things started to look different. It wasn't just the same little small group of people. It was other people coming in, people that weren't known necessarily. And one day, one of the ladies who was so adamant about this church needs all of that stood up and stomped off to the back of the room because she'd had enough. And when she got there, all of a sudden it came to her, this is what we wanted. This is what we prayed for. This is what we said. I haven't adapted. God, forgive me. It's different. It's the new thing. It's not the way it was, the way it is. We're all living in some common last days here. And it's really important that we're aware of it, that we appreciate it, that you appreciate the people that you're around. You appreciate the informal, kind of casual, comfortable way we can interact here, where you get a speaking part. Can't do that in very many churches. Potlucks, we've kind of declined in the area of potlucks, but I will I'll promote one that's going to be in late June. Now, just to say a little bit more about it, there's a number of June birthdays. I'm thinking about Nancy's birthday on the 7th, when we will put a 0 behind that 7. June 7th. And we're going to go down to Irvine and spend some time with her family that we haven't been to see for a long time. But we're thinking, we couldn't even put together a gathering very easily. And why would that gathering not include the church people? Right? And so we decided that, you know what? And here's where you die to yourself a little bit. Let's set me aside. It's not about me, even though it is. It's my birthday. That's why we're thinking about it. Her birthday. That's why we're thinking about it. But there's a lot of other people that also have birthdays. And so on the 22nd, we're going to have a big summer. It'll be the first day of summer, second day of summer. And we're going to open the summer up with a big potluck. And so I'd like you to put it in your calendars and have it in mind. There'll be a slide on that coming up at the very end. 22nd of June. I'm having to adapt to the idea that of my last days. It's my last days of tractor work because I wrecked my tractor. They're probably over, except if I rent one, and I probably will at some point. I find myself in the last days of my tireless physical work and energy involved in country living. I find it the last days of other things, and it occurred to me, and I will speak more on this in the weeks to come. It speaks to me of dying to self. There's a self that has to die, a self that is edified, gratified, enjoys the things I do, but have done so at risk, not only to myself, I make that secondary, but to my family, to my wife, to my congregation. I was on a ladder yesterday, tall ladder, leaning against a tree with a pole saw so I could reach out a little further. And when I was up there, yes, because the fire department said those branches that are close to the eaves need to go. And when I was up there, the ladder shifted a little bit. I was hanging onto the tree with one foot on the ladder, and the pole saw, I needed to put that up where it couldn't fall. And I recalled when I fell from the roof, I had gone up just fine, but when I came down, the center of balance was different. I hadn't wanted to nail a cleat into the roof to keep the bottom of the ladder from slipping. And so all of that was very fresh in my mind. And so hanging onto the tree, I took my hind foot and I pulled it up a little bit further, and then I very carefully scaled, came back down. And when I got down, I got a cleat and screws and my screwdriver, and I anchored that thing. You do learn. You can learn from mistakes. Very important, because things are still going to need to be done, but I recognize I can't do it the way I've always done it. Nor do I want to. So I'm living in last days. What is anyone here living in the last days of? Can you share anything? You see things that you... Go ahead, Nancy. Loud. Yeah. Well, you'll probably still do it. You just won't be making a practice of it, and people referred to you, you'll have to say whatever you say. If you can turn away. Not easy. Not easy to surrender to those things. Pam, did you have something? Just a second, though. The question, you're avoiding the question. Yeah. The question is, what last days things are you personally going through? Beyond the global thing, just in your own life, what things are you having to set aside? What areas are you having to die to self in? Yes. So, okay, so it has been edifying to you to worry about things. I understand. I understand. That's not so much dying to self. Dying to self is taking something that's very, very important to you. I gave an example. Nancy gave an example. Those things that are costly to us. There are things that are costly to us that we don't want to set aside. It's going to be very, very difficult. And this is what I see God whispering in my ear to Kevin. If you're going to die to yourself, that means you're going to do a lot of stuff you are not accustomed to doing, and you're going to have to set aside the things that you're accustomed to doing. I'm going to go into that further next week or in the weeks to come. I'll move forward here. Mm-hmm. And so you're not only moving away, you are embracing, you are taking hold of what it will look like and beginning to make the emotional and the psychological adjustments now. I would take that. Well, I feel overstated. I'm just processing it. Yeah, that's all we can do at this stage. Is it's kind of a long on. We hope it's a long on ramp, and we don't have a stroke tomorrow, where all of a sudden it's immediately necessary right now. All things have necessary endings. Necessary endings. The grass withers, beautiful lawns. The flowers fall, but the word of our God endures forever. All things have necessary endings. I'm going to bring it back to this setting here. These end times we all have in common. There are necessary endings. It had its day when it was beautiful and right, and it still is, but it won't be able to continue over the long haul for us to be the church by ourselves, to be God's purpose and view of what the church is. All things have necessary endings. I'm going to play a little video piece here.
Ecclesiastes chapter 3, very familiar passage of Scripture. In fact, those who are a part of a religious system or a church or a Christian, you've heard this probably 1,000 times, and so many others that have never been in church or around church have also heard this because it's a principle. To everything, there is a time and a season. There is a specific set moment, a time, an allocation of time for every event under heaven. A time to live, a time to die, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time, all these things. A time to keep, the Bible says, a time to throw away, a time to search for something and really go after it, a time to give it up as lost. There's just all these variables we can talk about. What I want to talk to you about today is this, and it has to do with that entire chapter, and it's called necessary endings. I'm reading a great book right now by Dr. Henry Cloud, and I want to strongly recommend this book to you called Necessary Endings. The principles in this book are so profound, but yet they're also very simple, but yet most of us don't really grasp it. Most of us want to take something that's been alive for a season, and when the season of that thing begins to wane and it begins to diminish, we want to bring out the paddles and clear, resuscitate it. We want to bring the oxygen bottle out. We want to put an IV in its arm. We want to do whatever we have to do to keep something alive. Yet, the way life works is it's ebb and flow. It's peaks and it's valleys. And there are seasons in your life when you must allow things to come to their natural ending. And when we refuse to allow something to die, when we refuse to allow something to end, what we're doing is we are actually causing that thing to continue to occupy the space that the new thing God has planned for us is supposed to be occupying. We're not making room for the next gift. We're not making room for the next relationship. We're not making room for the next job or the next business. We are holding on to what has been at the expense of what could be. I want to encourage you today to inventory your life. Look at relationships. Look at your current job or career path. Look at the business that you own. And maybe it's time for you to reinvent that whole thing and start with a fresh beginning, with a new idea, a new concept, a new partnership. Maybe it's a relationship that you've had for a very long time, and that relationship has served its purpose, and God wants to bring new ones into your life, people that can add value to you, but you're holding on and spending all your time with these old relationships that are not going to add value to you in the new season. What is it that you need to bring to an end? What is it that you need to allow to die? What is it that you need to actually give permission to say, all right, you know what? This season's been great, but I'm going to close the chapter on that book. I'm going to turn the page because God's wanting to write something new in my life now. Necessary endings. They're so important. I'd love for you to sit down and really pray and look at and meditate on what is it in my life that I need to bring closure to so that the new thing God wants to birth in me can emerge and can be a new blessing in my life. My name is Brian Holmes. Thanks for joining us on this segment. Be encouraged. We look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.
That seems to hit the spot so clearly. It's right on the mark. I can't help but personalize it here for what I'm talking about, specifically in relation to our church. We remain a church family. The church will expand. Our family will grow. Some will pass. Some will move. Something will, life takes its course. And it's not the end, it's the beginning. In Romans 13, Paul says this. He says, this is all the more urgent, for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is almost gone. The day of salvation will soon be here. So remove your dark deeds like dirty clothes and put on the shining armor of right living. Because we belong to the day, we must live decent lives for all to see. I think as we explore this dying to self more closely, we're going to be convicted. Are we the people that Jesus has called? Are we doing life? How much money did Jesus have? How big a house? How nice a car? How much stuff did he have? Okay, I'm not going to argue with you, but I'm talking the man who walked with us, who modeled for us. How important did he make all of that other stuff? Are we following after him? Or are we going our own way? I'm going my own way. More than following after him. I hope that lands somewhere for people. The truth be told, I'm telling the truth because I don't want it to be something that's not told. There are, in the time I am here, which I don't know how long that'll be. It might still be here in 2026. I don't know. We don't know. Not yet. One ladder could change that. You're coming from a different angle than I was, but that's true too. And now I lost my thought. Anyway, it's all, oh, I know. You know what? I want to be as truthful as possible. I want to speak to the hard things. I don't want to pacify you. Sometimes the shepherd has to break the leg of the lamb that wanders, put it over his shoulder, and let the lamb be gimped for a while so that it stops wandering. I want to be able to speak the hard things. I feel obliged to do that. You know, one of the things I read about Pope Francis and I really appreciated was that he was very close and connected to the little person, and he could also speak to power. He could also confront world powers to tell them, that's wrong. What you're doing is wrong. And what I heard was that there was a church in Gaza, a small Catholic church that still stood, and every night at 7 o'clock he would call that pastor and ask, how are you doing? How did things go today? If they didn't get bombed, that was no small thing. But that kind of a person who's connected here but can also speak to power and speak about power and corruption and all of those kinds of things. And it's risky territory. Pilate said, what is truth? He's looking at truth. He says, well, what is it? As though it was a relative thing. John 8:31-33 says this. Jesus said to the people who believed in him, you are truly my disciples. I emphasize the if part of it. It's got an if. You're truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Colossians, it says it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm. Do not be yoked again by, do not be enslaved again by a yoke of slavery. And so we move beyond. This is all the more urgent, for you know how late it is. Time is running out. Wake up, for our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. You've done these. Another thing that came to mind, and I'm going to wrap it up here, is Ecclesiastes has been a kind of a draw to me, and I haven't really gone down the road with it. But vanity. I see all the things that I've done that are vanity. This past week, I had built a beautiful outdoor kitchen. It had a barbecue, it had wood countertops and a raised bar for serving, and water to a sink, and drawers, cabinets, all of these things, and all, repurposed types of things. And it was wonderful. Look forward to using it. Maybe we used it twice. And then we covered it up with a tarp because the cover, we had made it, but failed in the sun. Covered it up with a tarp, and when the tarp blew off a couple of weeks ago, the mice had taken over. And you know how it is when mice take over? They defile it. They were in the drawers. They were in the barbecue. They were on top of the cabinets. It was ruined. For all the effort that had gone into it, I have to look back and say, that's just vanity. What else could I have done in that time that would have been more valuable, that would have had eternal, lasting value than this need to be busy and do and make and create and all of that can be a fool's errand. But it's a learning moment. It's time to look in the mirror, to look at our life and move forward. Meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Now that could sound very negative, but it can also be very positive for taking a look. I've thought of the word disillusionment. That sounds like, oh, I don't want to be disillusioned. No, that means you're no longer under the illusion. Okay, we need to be done here. Self-denial, to live for Christ is to die to self. I tell you the truth. There he goes, telling the truth again. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. You can either live to die or die to live. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. We're living in these last days of what's right here, right now. Think about it. Think about what that means to you. Think about it globally. Think about it in the world, but think about it also in your own lives. What things need to have a necessary ending. And now I'd receive the offering, and we're going to do something a little special here today. Sharon's going to